In the aftermath of the tentative debt ceiling agreement reached between President Biden and Kevin McCarthy, there seemed to be two primary questions. Will it pass Congress, and who won? Intrigued? Then click that like and subscribe, and enjoy the video. So in a previous video, we discussed the tentative debt ceiling agreement reached between the President and the Republican Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. I say tentative because, again, it needs to pass Congress. This is just a verbal agreement for all intents and purposes, a framework. The legislative text has been released, but there still needs to be a vote on it in the House of Representatives, which is scheduled to be Wednesday, and then a subsequent vote in the Senate, which is supposed to be sometime after, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It depends on how quickly the House can get it passed. But there's still debate. There's still questions about whether or not it will pass either chamber, because in the aftermath of this agreement, there have been reactions, strong reactions from elements of both sides, particularly on the Republican side, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I do quickly want to play a clip here from the leader of the the House of Representatives Progressive Caucus, Representative Pramila Jayapal. She's on CNN talking with Jake Tapper about this debt ceiling agreement, and I really want to focus on the tail end of this conversation because Jake Tapper was able to pin her down on a very specific, very pertinent question. Let's play the clip and break it down.
This work requirements piece look like?
So I know you hate it when I do this, but I'm going to give you a yes or no question right now. And the yes or no question is all the Democrats.
I may or may not answer.
Well, that's fair. But Democrats watching right now at the White House, your friend Hakeem Jeffries, others, do they still have to worry about the Progressive Caucus and whether or not your caucus will support? Yes, they do. Okay, Congresswoman Jayapal, thank you so much.
Yes, they have to worry. Yes.
Yeah, they have to worry. Okay, well, you heard the lady. Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Good to see you, as always.
So there you had it. That was Pramila Jayapal publicly declaring on CNN that the White House and more moderate Democrats and Democratic leadership, so Minority Leader in the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and obviously the President, they do have to worry about rallying all the Democratic votes, particularly from the Freedom Caucus. And I don't know if the more progressive elements of the Senate, like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, I'm not sure if they've weighed in on this yet, but I would suspect that if they have to worry about Pramila Jayapal and her caucus, which includes Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and AOC, obviously, then they probably also need to worry about persuading Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and, again, the more progressive elements of the Democratic Party. That said, as frustrated as the more progressive elements of the Democratic Party in both chambers are undoubtedly, that they seem to be, right, because of some increased work requirements in this tentative agreement, some of the clawback of COVID relief funds, an increase in defense spending, and the fact that however small these concessions may be to, the White House, right, the White House is probably going to say, listen, these concessions are nowhere near what the Republicans demanded initially. We got the better of the deal. That may be true, and I think there's a compelling case that that is the case. But progressives will say, listen, you shouldn't have agreed to any of these things because you had the 14th Amendment on your side. You had the $1 million coin. You didn't exploit all the unilateral options to basically try to free yourself of the Republican hostage takers. So we'll get into that at the very end of the video, but I do, for schadenfreude purposes, want to turn attention to how the Republicans have reacted. So again, to whatever extent progressive Democrats are bummed by this deal, it seems to be that the more conservative elements of the Republican Party, like the Freedom Caucus, Matt Gaetz, etc. and so forth, seems like they're very upset with this agreement between Kevin McCarthy and the president. Midas Touch has a great thread, like with tweets and everything from these various Republicans, so let's break them down. Republican extremists are furious at the deal President Biden negotiated with Kevin McCarthy to raise the debt ceiling. So a couple of them, Lauren Boebert, our base didn't volunteer, door knock, and fight this hard to get us the majority for this kind of compromise deal with Joe Biden. Our voters deserve better than this. We work for them. You can count me as a no on this deal. We can do better. Bob Good, I am hearing the deal is for $4 trillion increase in the debt limit. If that's true, I don't need to hear anything else. No one claiming to be a conservative could justify a yes vote. Chip Roy, this is the guy from Texas who threatened to blow stuff up if there was a debt ceiling increase, said, I do not like the deal as I understand it from the cheerleading so far. I will have more to follow once I see more details. Dan Bishop, he said a couple of things. Heard the call from Kevin McCarthy explaining the deal. Rhinos congratulating McCarthy for getting almost Zippo in exchange for the $4 trillion debt ceiling hike was enough to make you vomit. Actually, it's so bad they won't even give a figure for the debt ceiling hike, only that it's suspended until Q1 2025. Our bill last year was our bill was a year less. Excuse me. And then he said, of the $80 billion Democrats appropriated to the IRS over 10 years, the deal rescinds $1.9 billion. You read that right. That's the kind of get that's so good McCarthy agreed to increase the debt ceiling $4 trillion. You have Cat Turd, who thankfully is not a member of Congress as far as we know. He's upset. He says that McCarthy should change his name to Kevin McCavey. Ralph Norman, the deal is insanity. A $4 trillion debt increase with virtually no cuts is not what we agreed to. Not going to vote to bankrupt our country. The American people deserve better. Ken Buck, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it just goes on. Rand Paul, fake conservatives agree to fake spending cuts. Yadi J.D. Vance, the more I learn about this debt ceiling deal, the more I think it's bad news. Dan Bongino, the debt ceiling deal looks like excrement. Ted Cruz, Ted Cruz. He's right. There's not one thing for the Dems. There are $4 trillion worth of things. A blank check for Democrats. That's actually pretty funny. Okay, Ted Cruz there, flying Ted Cruz, just made me laugh for the first time. That's hilarious. So if you are a left-leaning moderate, if you're a leftist, if you're a Democrat, if you're watching this, this is my tentative take on it. Again, this happened over the weekend. This is a tentative agreement. It may not pass Congress. I am disappointed that the president was not bolder and more aggressive with, again, the 14th Amendment or minting the $1 trillion coin. This was a hostage situation. Matt Gaetz, we covered this in a video last week. Matt Gaetz, who is a powerful, prominent member of the Freedom Caucus, the Trump-aligned Freedom Caucus, the far-right element, he made it very clear. He said it bluntly. This is a hostage situation. The president should have rejected that unilaterally and said, listen, fellas, I want to work with you in good faith, and if you feel that a congressional piece of legislation is necessary to raise, suspend, or abolish the debt ceiling, I'd love that. But if you don't work with me in good faith, if you don't do it cleanly, I will use the constitutional powers at my disposal, such as the 14th Amendment and minting the $1 trillion coin, and I'm going to do it anyway because the Constitution demands that I honor the full faith and credit of the United States and not question the validity of the public debt. So that's what I'm going to do. If you want to try to sue me, so be it. Good luck finding a judge who will let you do it. And then if it makes its way before the Supreme Court, not sure you can count on those 6 justices, those 6 conservative justices, agreeing to tank the domestic and international economy for political brinkmanship, which, by the way, would hurt them. It would hurt those justices financially, too, to say nothing of their reputations or anything else. I am bummed that President Biden did not channel more of Dark Brandon. Do what Abraham Lincoln did, non-acquiescence, use the power of the executive branch, which Republicans have done time and time again, but use it in this case for the benefit of the American people, including, ironically, conservatives. Avoiding a debt ceiling crisis would actually benefit conservatives as well, would benefit conservatives in West Virginia, in Arkansas, and Alabama, because their savings and 401ks won't implode when a debt ceiling, when the debt ceiling is not met and there's a default. They would also avoid losing their jobs because, according to multiple financial firms, 8 million jobs could have been lost and may indeed be lost if the debt ceiling is breached and the Treasury runs out of money to pay America's bills and Congress or the president don't act. So I wish he channeled more of Dark Brandon. I am disappointed that that's the case because even if this deal is agreed to, it just kicks the can down the road until January 2025. Then what? We're going to do this again. This is going to happen again. If Biden is reelected, and Republicans are in a position to hold hostage the debt ceiling, they will do this again. They've done it twice under Biden. They did it twice under Obama. They threatened it twice under Clinton. This is something that the Republicans will do. They are a bad faith, disloyal opposition party with no limiting principle. And if they think they can extort you, they're incentivized to do it again. So I am disappointed. That said, set aside my disappointment there and looking just within the context of the tentative framework of the deal, seems pretty clear that President Biden got the upper hand. Like, if you accept that set aside the fact that any deal whatsoever is a disappointment, which, again, I agree with. I agree that any deal is a disappointment. I wanted that Dark Branded energy. But if you just examine the deal on its own merits compared to what Republicans were demanding and compared to their reaction, seems pretty obvious that President Biden, with his superior statesmanship, superior experience, and superior negotiating skills, walked away having the better of the deal compared to McCarthy. McCarthy got some critical concessions, but very few compared to what he demanded, and the bulk of President Biden's agenda with respect to climate change, student loan forgiveness, the IRS, all these things, remains relatively untouched. So I think two things can be true simultaneously. We should have seen Dark Brandon be Dark Brandon, but if Dark Brandon wasn't going to show up and it's just regular President Biden versus the Republicans and Kevin McCarthy, Biden is still more than a match for them. So we'll see what happens, but so far, just you got to love the schadenfreude from the Republican Party, and to whatever extent that will get you through the day, bask in it.